What's going on, Graveyard Shift fam? It is your fearless shift leader clocked in for another interesting true crime story. Forgive me for looking rough, y'all. Just one of them days that a girl goes through. Just one of them days that a guy goes through, man. I had no intentions of doing a true crime story today, but I came across this story and it pissed me off. Let me tell you why this story pissed me off. One, I didn't know there was a confessions hotline. So if you ever do something in your life and the guilt is weighing heavy on your conscience, there's literally a telephone line you can call and tell on yourself. Now, I don't know if that's meant for you to make yourself feel better, to get it off your chest, but I didn't know that said telephone line then tells on your ass. That's the get you gotcha, or the get you gotcha, or this get you gotcha. Out here telling on yourself to get told on by somebody for telling on yourself. Y'all, this story's wild. Follow me. This story is about 17-year-old Tracey Kirkpatrick. You see, Tracey was very introspective. They said she was a pretty teenager from Point of Rocks, which is a small town near Frederick, Maryland. You see, Tracey was the third of 4 children. She was an honor roll student. They said she loved reading and she loved writing poetry. And then in early 1989, she read her family a haunting poem that was written by Christina Rossetti. So Tracey, she's into poetry, she's artsy, she runs across some poetry she likes, and she decides to recite that poem to her family. You see, the poem seemed to be asking them not to grieve for her when she was gone. It went something like, remember me when I'm gone away, gone far away, into the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand. You see, according to Tracey's mother, Diane, she and her boyfriend, Billy, had recently broke up. So she was apparently expressing her feelings through her writing. Just like most teenage girls, man. You go through a little breakup, you write in your diary, you write a poem. But no, you pouring out your feelings, you pouring out your emotions. Sometimes it's good to express them through writing. But sometimes what you write can be somewhat alarming to some. You see, her mother Diane described her as very intelligent and a hard worker. She loved people and loved to be around them. And she also loved having a lot of friends. You see, during Tracey's senior year in high school, she held down 2 part-time jobs. And one of them was a sales clerk at Aileen Lady Sportswear in the Westridge Square shopping center. Now, you see, she took these jobs to help pay for her upcoming business college classes, which she had planned to attend in the fall. You see, Tracey's dream was to become an attorney. But then on the night of March 15, 1989, she was assigned to close the store and tally up all the day's receipts. You see, it was her first time ever being tasked with this responsibility by herself. But she took it, head on. She was like, of course I can close down this shop, tally up the receipts. I got it. You see, Diane, Tracey's mother, and the manager both stopped in at different points during the evening. 15 minutes before closing time, Tracey was alone, and that was at about 8:45 p.m. Now, 2 hours later, at about 10:50 p.m., a shopping mall security guard noticed that there were lights left on inside of the store. So he also saw that the front door was slightly open. So he went in, walked around towards the back, and he called out, but he got no response. So the security guard walks further into the store, into the back storage room, and he found Tracey's lifeless body on the floor. You see, Tracey had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and in the back. There were drops of blood that led down the rear hallway toward the loading dock. So the security guard immediately called the police. And at almost that same moment, Tracey's parents, Billy and Diane, were en route to the shopping mall. It was nearly 11 p.m. and it was almost an hour after Tracey usually comes home. So they were worried. They knew that she was closing up by herself. They hadn't seen her. She's an hour late. They going straight to the mall. But you see, when their parents arrived there, they were shocked to discover that there was literally police cars surrounding the mall. They got out and they told the police that their daughter was inside. And then that's when her parents were informed that she was in fact dead. Diane, her mother, didn't remember much after that because she went into total shock. She was later treated in the hospital, and that's when things started coming back to her. You see, Tracey's family couldn't understand why anyone would have chosen her to kill her. Like, she had no enemies, she had no fighting. Yes, she was just going through a breakup, but nothing to alarm them or signify that she was signal that she was in any danger. You see, police could find no apparent motive for Tracey's brutal murder. There was no sign of sexual assault. The day's cash receipts were found, left untouched on the counter. However, Tracey's purse was missing. There was no signs of forced entry. And since there were no indications of a struggle, police believed that her killer was someone that she knew. A thorough analysis of the crime scene turned up latent fingerprints, but no other physical evidence. The case was stalled. And then 3 months later, in June of 1989, police got their first real lead when a mysterious telephone call was recorded by a nationwide confession hotline in Las Vegas. You see, the caller began by saying, "Hello, my name is Don, and I'm calling from Frederick, Maryland. I know this is going to sound surprising, but 3 months ago, I stabbed a girl to death." And you might think that I'm making this tape just to try to set myself up to be getting caught, but there are a lot of guys named Don in Frederick. You see, the hotline immediately notified Frederick police. Detective Barry Horner listened to the tape and heard sincerity in the caller's voice. He became convinced that the caller was in fact Tracey's killer. Detective Horner thought the caller's knowledge of the case was convincing, so he took the tape into his police chief. And in it, the caller continued by saying, "The girl I killed was working in a ladies' sportswear store. I often came by and talked to her when she was working alone. And one night when she was in the storeroom and we were talking, our conversations turned into an argument. And so I took out a knife that I have with me at all times and I killed her. And a few days later, I realized I had created a lot of sadness. And I thought about turning myself into the police. But whatever they do to me, I mean, that wouldn't bring Tracey back." This is what this man is saying, y'all. This is what he's saying on a recorded call. He then goes on to say, "So I've decided that I better keep free because we have the death penalty here in Maryland. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry about what I did, but nothing can change it. Bye." The call was traced to a Safeway supermarket in Walkersville, Maryland, which is 7 miles north of Frederick. Detective Horner felt that if the caller was Tracey's killer, he wanted to be caught, and he was seeking help through the hotline. Now, the police chief and other members of the police department decided to compose a letter to the caller and address it to Don, the name that he used, and ask him to please come forward and talk to them. The letter was published in a local newspaper on October 10th, 1989, but the police received no response. On October 24th, Martha Woodward, a Massachusetts woman with a reputation as a psychic, began to receive calls from a young man who identified himself as Sean. He seemed obsessed with finding the person who had killed Tracey. Martha told him that she needed more information before she could even think that she could be of an assistance. So eventually the guy agreed and he sent her newspaper clippings. When she received the envelope with his handwriting on the outside, she thought that he had a much stronger involvement in the case than just being a friend who was interested. So she found the handwriting extremely disturbed, so she felt it was her responsibility to alert the police that she had a potential suspect for them. Chief Richard Ashton played the confession tape from Martha over the phone, and she believed that that voice was Sean's. She was shocked to hear him on the tape confessing to Tracey's murder. She maintained contact with him for some time. Meanwhile, police checked out the return address on his envelope. It was in Walkersville, Maryland, the same town where the call-in confession had been made. So if you're keeping up with what I'm saying, somebody called a hotline in Vegas confessing. Then somebody called a psychic acting like they was trying to find the killer and needed their help. Both of these voices were verified by the psychic, who is now listening to the recorded phone call tape and listening and comparing it to the voice of the Sean guy who's calling obsessed with the case. Now, when the police ended up getting to Sean's address, there was not a man named Sean or Don there. Another dead end for the Frederick police. So they turned to local radio stations for help. Several stations played the confession tape on air on the anniversary of Tracey's murder after it aired. 3 people claimed that they thought they recognized the voice. Again, The caller was not named Sean or Don, but he was the young man who lived at the return address of Martha's letter. Police searched his home the next day, and they collected evidence from the home and sent it to the state laboratory to be examined. However, an examination and re-examination of the evidence was inconclusive. They were unable to determine if he had any involvement in Tracey's murder. Now, in the search, police found many newspaper clippings about Tracey's murder, but could not find any evidence that the man knew her personally. He pled the Fifth Amendment and refused to answer any questions. But see, Tracey's mother, Diane, believes that someone saw or heard something on the night of Tracey's murder, whether it had been someone leaving the store, someone running from it, whatever it may be. She can't imagine that a murder could just happen and no one knows anything about it. You see, Chief Ashton is frustrated that they have been unable to solve this case. However, him and his department have stated that they would not give up until they found out who did it. Then on March 20th, 1989, Tracey was buried in Oak Grove Cemetery near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the poem that she had once recited to her family was inscribed on her headstone. Now, fast forward to 1993. The case was still unsolved. But in 1993, Corporal Robert Servicek, we're just gonna call him Corporal Rob. He took over the investigation of Tracey's murder, and in March of 1994, he stated that they identified a prime suspect in the case. At the time of the murder, the man lived in Frederick with his family. He was an acquaintance and former co-worker of Tracey's, who was a few years older than her. And according to Corporal Rob, jealousy, anger, and revenge were the motives for her murder. She reportedly thought of the man only as a friend, while he read too much into the relationship and would not let her go. Corporal Rob was certain that the man was Tracey's killer based on a large amount of circumstantial evidence against him. Then in May of 1994, a grand jury convened to hear the evidence against the suspect. 46 witnesses testified, and the grand jury voted to indict the young man. However, the deputy state attorney declined to prosecute him because she did not believe that she would be able to win a conviction. Corporal Rob later claimed that the political and personal agendas and people not doing their damn jobs prevented the arrest from being made. The man calling himself Don and Sean was later ruled out as a suspect. And in 2009, police noted that 2 suspects developed over the years remained viable. One is a suspect investigated by the grand jury in 1994, and police have also stated that they do not have enough evidence to charge anyone at the time. Samples of evidence found at the scene have been submitted several times in an attempt to obtain DNA profile, and so far they have been unsuccessful. One of the potential suspects is believed to be a man by the name of Don Barnes Jr., the security guard who found Tracey's body. His daughter allegedly claimed that he was abusive towards her and her mother, and she also believes that he was involved in Tracey's murder and had over an hour to cover up the crime. They also say that his father was a police chief at the time of her murder, and someone suggested that he may have covered up evidence in the case. However, none of this has been confirmed, and Tracey's killer has yet to be identified or apprehended. It's gotta be a horrible feeling to think that you have knowledge or information that could prove that someone did something to someone. And no matter how much you think you have, someone can literally be like, I don't think I can win this case, so I'm not gonna take it. Like, that's what makes people become vigilantes. I'm not saying we condone vigilantisms with the graveyard shift. But I'm just saying, that's crazy. I see why. I hate that for Tracey. I hate that she hasn't found any justice. I hate whoever did it is still walking around. But I'm sure God, yeah. I don't know who y'all believe in, and whoever y'all believe in is who y'all believe in. But I believe that my God, the Lord that I serve, nah, vengeance will be his. You don't get away with stuff like that. I don't believe in no religion you get away with stuff like that at all. And then to kind of taunt the media, like, that's just wild. To taunt the police, yeah. All right, y'all. I'm Dalen Spratt. There's been another true crime story. Justice for Tracey. May she rest in peace. And for the person who committed that crime, if they're still living and at large, may they get no peace. Love, love, love.